I think that Iran is a very important state in the larger calculus of this BRICS organization because of its oil and natural gas wealth. It's not the only thing that Iran offers, but it's substantial. It represents a nation of over 100 million people. It is enormous in size, almost the size of Western Europe. And it is wedged in between the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean and, of course, Turkey and the Caucasus. This is very close to Russia. This is very important to Russia. Russia wants to build this relationship. So whatever we think we can offer, I see absolutely no chance whatsoever that President Putin is going to abandon Iran or anything else and say, okay, in return for that, you know, if you just let us alone and we're allowed to sit here and we do this deal on Ukraine, then we won't interfere with anything else. I think that's foolish nonsense and has no chance of success. But my impression is that that is the strategic approach that is developing.
And so what about if he's not going to have any success with Putin? And we're going to talk about that more in detail in a few minutes. But what about Netanyahu? If Trump gets to a position where he thinks, okay, this is not in America's interest, and Netanyahu says this is in our interest, and he goes in this direction, Netanyahu has shown that he would completely ignore Biden throughout his entire, ever since this war started, that he had no hesitation to go against the American president then. Will that continue under Trump?
I suspect it will. I don't think that President Trump is going to discover the gulf that exists between Israeli interests and American interests. I think he's going to insist on seeing them as one and the same, which of course is Mr. Netanyahu's desire and the desire of the lobby and the enormously powerful forces that have helped to elect Trump and poured so much money into his campaign. I think that the view will be that we must press ahead in order to secure Israel's position in the region permanently. That means more than defeat Hezbollah temporarily or Gaza temporarily, because those problems are not going to go away. They're permanent. I don't think the Israelis can kill their way out of that, contrary to what they may think. But I think it means helping to establish Jewish supremacy in the entire Middle East, which with pieces of other people's countries and the expulsion or killing of Arabs inside Israel, and potentially pushing them into probably Jordan, assuming that the Jordanian government survives, which seems unlikely. So the point is, I think all of this rests on wishful thinking, but I see no evidence that he's going to abandon it. Now, maybe once he's inaugurated and he realizes the costs to us, I think the costs to us are enormous. I think our position in the region, frankly, at this point in the Middle East is finished. You can certainly ask Ambassador Freeman about that, who's much more in touch with it than I am. But my perception is that we're finished in the region. We have not a leg to stand on anymore. So I don't see it working, but that's what I see happening. And I just don't see President Trump backing off of his current position, which is their interests and our interests are the same.
Well, let's certainly hope that there's some daylight does appear in between now and January 20th of next year when he takes the reins, because I couldn't agree with you more that our situation is there is a big gulf between Israeli interests and our actual interests, and I hope he discovers that.
Well, Dan, before you leave that, let's just make sure the audience understands something, the people listening. When you go to Washington and you begin talking to these people, whether it's Brian Hook or Tony Blinken or any number of these characters, they really feel nothing but contempt for much of the world. They see us as the superpower that can march with immunity and invulnerability all over the place. They continue to view, particularly in the Middle East, these countries as weak, countries that can't put up any resistance to us, countries that can be bullied into submission and eventually compelled to bend the knee and accept Israeli dominance of the Middle East. I don't agree with that. I think they're delusional, but I think they really feel that way. So when you bring up and say, well, you know, so-and-so in Iraq says this, who cares? Their view is, who cares what these people think? They're going to have to do what we make them do anyway. I don't see it that way. I think the world has changed dramatically. This is not 1910. This is not 1945. This is not 1965.
It's not 1990 either. Yeah,
everything has changed.
Very much so. One other thing that might have changed a little bit, one other area I guess that Trump might have more possibility of success, and we'll certainly want to see what you say about this, is in the Russia-Ukraine war. He has been outspoken from the beginning of this campaign that if he were in office, that he would end it in a day, et cetera. Now, we always know that that's been hyperbole, but that does properly, I think, focus on what his intentions are. I want to play a clip here just to kind of remind people where sort of get a running start into this. In September, when Zelensky actually came to visit then candidate Trump, he wanted to get an endorsement for continuing the war when he came in, but Trump didn't quite give him what he was looking for.
So we have a very good relationship. And I also have a very good relationship, as you know, with President Putin. And I think if we win, I think we're going to get it resolved very quickly. I really think we're going to get it resolved.
I hope we have more good relations.
We're going to have, I see. Yeah, but you know, it takes two to tango, you know, and.
So let me just ask your opinion. I mean, that clip is one of them. And you talk about disdain for people like some of the U.S. in the Middle East. How much respect do you think that Trump actually has for Zelensky?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea. I think President Trump simply looks at this as a setting where he can, because of his unique attributes and talents, march in and, quote unquote, cut a deal. The danger of that assumption is that he comes out as having heroically solved the problem, cut the Gordian knot, and brought peace to Eastern Europe. I'm not sure it's going to work that way. I mean, you've got to look at the battlefield right now, from the Baltic all the way down to the Persian Gulf. Russia has won. It's not in dispute, and President Trump knows that. He also knows that going to war with Russia is something to be avoided, and that's good. I'm glad he understands that. What he may not understand is that Russia is going to sit across from him and say, we've won the war. This is what we control. We're going to keep it. And if we don't get a settlement that makes Ukraine neutral, period, unconditionally, permanently, because that's the precondition for peace from the Russian standpoint, we will continue to move towards the Dnieper River and right up to Kiev. I mean, that's essentially where the Russians are right now. That's what they can do. They know that. So what you want to come in here, you want peace. What are you asking us to sign up for? And that's what you and I don't know. But I think President Trump is going to go in there with some suggestions that I think are impossible. One is, we want a free hand in the Middle East to do whatever we and the Israelis want to do. Please get out of Iran. Wrong. That's not going to happen. Will not happen. Secondly, we want Ukraine to be neutral, but they ought to be able to do the following 10 things, and perhaps neutrality only for 20 years. Wrong. Absolutely out of the question. And then the next question that Putin is going to ask: when are you going to stop aiding the Ukrainians? When are you going to withdraw all of your forces inside Ukraine? That means all these Americans in Ukrainian uniform, Americans and whatever guys, CIA, Army, Air Force, whatever is there. When are you going to get them out? And those are the questions that are going to come back from Putin. And if Trump says, well, if you'll sign up for this and this, then we'll do that, I don't think it'll work. I just don't think we have anything to offer. Again, well, we'll lift sanctions. And the Russians aren't completely stupid. They know that sanctions have been imposed on them for years, and they found a way around them. So their attitude may be, well, fine. It doesn't make any difference to us whether you impose sanctions or not. We're not going to back down from what we have said we will demand. I think it's a hugely difficult situation. Now, do the Russians want to get along with us? Absolutely. Would Putin like to do business with the United States? Absolutely, without question. We have prevented the Europeans from doing business with him. Dan, that's about to change dramatically. The Europeans are about to walk out on that.
Yeah, and some of that's already started after Trump was elected. Viktor Orban was just beside himself, saying, "I think that we're moving in a whole new direction." To your point, there, he made that comment. A couple of interesting things that Putin said yesterday at the Valdai conference, which are very much related to what you just said here. First of all, that really, unlike the Biden administration, he's actually willing to talk to Trump.
About the future president, well, you can have any attitude toward him, because during his first iteration as president, he was dubbed as mostly a businessman, that he is not very well versed in politics, he can make a lot of mistakes. But from the outset, I can tell you that his behavior when there was an attempt on his life, I was impressed. He's a courageous person. What he said about his desire to rebuild relations with Russia, to facilitate an end to the Ukrainian crisis, I think this deserves attention at the very least. And I would like to take this opportunity to offer my congratulations on his election as President of the United States. If he does what he has been promising, before the inauguration, if he makes a phone call, if he says, "Vladimir, let's meet," I don't think it would be beneath me to call him myself.
What that first clip there, Doug, just really highlights to me is it's kind of a source of embarrassment, is that Putin comes across, instead of, this modern day Hitler that everybody tries to caricature him, he sounds very reasonable. He sounds like I'm willing to talk, and actually gave congratulations on Trump's winning. And I don't recall Biden giving congratulations when Putin won his election earlier this year. And it just makes us look kind of small.
Well, of course, if you go back and look carefully at the behavior of Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, and President Putin, they have been gentlemen throughout. They haven't refused to shake anybody's hands. They haven't publicly excoriated us or our leadership and poured buckets of filth and abuse all over them. These are European politicians in the traditional sense of the word, contrary to what the neocons claim and the poisonous nonsense that they promote. So, look, I think he said the right thing, and he's going to do that. We're going to listen. We'll talk. That doesn't mean we will accept. They would like to end all of these things. They would like, good relations. But how do you get there unless you, the United States, are first of all willing to treat Russia as a great power, treat it with respect, respect Russia's interests? We've never done that. And that has to happen. I think it's going to be difficult for this administration to do everything that it needs to do to get to that point, because of all the other things I discussed, the hooks, the underlying purposes and strategic interests that we're trying to promote. Abandon the Middle East, let us run that, let us and the Israelis do whatever we want. No, it's not going to happen. We want you to back away from China. No, it's not going to happen.